a bit of technical stuff. Welcome Instagram, welcome YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn, and Twitter. Um, and let me get my links up here for you. All right, so we have all of our links up there except for Whatnot. And I wanted to talk a little bit about that tonight, so that you guys can know what it's about and how, if you want to join, how you can do that. Um, and it's free to sign up as a buyer. Well, it's free to sign up as a seller actually too. And so it's a really fun format. You can if you're a seller, you can sell all kinds of stuff on there. I am selling books, which has been really fun. There's a really tight book community on there, and I feel like it's a really positive thing. So I have been on there selling books, and I've been on there since December, and it's kind of a steady growing type thing. So it takes a while, to get your community going, but it's going really well. So I've been really encouraged. And so we are doing that. I have mostly library things on there right now, although I do have some collectibles off and on, depending on the week and how things are going. But I'm doing a lot of our libraries things, and they have a ton of stuff. Like there's a lot. There's thousands and thousands of books and ephemera. In fact, tomorrow afternoon I'm doing a comic book and ephemera. Uh, they call them shows, but they're just like auctions. And so I'm doing that tomorrow at 1 o'clock at Central Standard Time. If anybody wants to join in, costs nothing to be a buyer unless you buy something. But it doesn't cost anything to sign up, and it's just a real positive platform to sell on. I am on eBay as well, as Rare and Antiquarian Bookfinders, and also Rare and Antiquarian Estate Finds. And so that's going really well. And so, yeah, it's just been a really great time getting to know people, and also being on here with you guys. So let me know if there's anything you have questions about. We've been doing a little bit of reading every night on Agatha Christie's Sleeping Murder book, which has been really good. I've really enjoyed it. And so we'll do that tonight too as well. We still have sales in both the stores on eBay. Biblio is not, there's no sales right now, but there is a little bit of new content on there, new inventory, new old inventory, I should say. And so it's going really well. I think that we'll have plenty of, time to get our reading done here. And so if there's anything you guys want or need, let me know. I did want to share with you one thing I got in. I don't have it listed anywhere, but I got this for a client to sell, from a client, I should say, to sell, but a real nice copy of Gone with the Wind. It is a very early copy, so you guys can, it'll be backwards for you guys, but it's a real nice copy. It's the June printing. If for those of you that are familiar with Gone with the Wind, 1936 June printing. And so it's a very early copy, and it is a first edition. Um, and it is property. It's from the library of Sherwood Dixon, who is or was, he's no longer with us. He was a lieutenant governor for Illinois back in the 50s. So this is from his library, which I thought was pretty cool. So anyway, I just wanted to share that with you. That's probably going to be it's going to be between $400 and $600. So it's an investment book. It's one of my ones that will take a while probably to sell, find the right buyer for it. But it's an investment book. It'll only go up in price. So as the years go on. Okay, well we'll get going on this. We're on chapter 8 of Agatha Christie's Sleeping Murder, in case you're wondering what we're reading. And I'll just start right in. It's called Kelvin Halliday's Delusion. They were in the garden on the following morning when Mrs. Cocker came out and said, "Excuse me, sir, there's a Dr. Kennedy on the phone." Now, I'm just a little background on this. This is a little bit on the creep side as far as Agatha Christie's mysteries. This one is about a couple that bought a house that gave the wife sort of a deja vu feeling, and they're finding out now that she actually lived there as a child, and so they're trying to dig into like how she got to live there, and her husband is helping her now try to figure this out. This is a Miss Marple mystery, by the way. Um, so leaving Gwenda in consultation with old Foster, Giles went into the house and picked up the telephone receiver. "Giles Reed here, this is her husband. This is Dr. Kennedy. I've been thinking over our conversation yesterday, Mr. Reed. There are certain facts which I think perhaps you and your wife ought to know. Will you be at home if I come over this afternoon?" "Certainly we shall. What time?" 3 o'clock. "Suits us. In the garden, old Foster said to Gwenda, 'Is that Dr. Kennedy as used to live over at West Cliff?' 'I expect so. Did you know him?' 'He was allus reckoned to be the best doctor here, not but what Miss Dr. Lazenby wasn't more popular. Always had a word and a good laugh to jolly you along. Dr. Lazenby did. Dr. Kennedy was always short and a bit dry like, but he knew his job. When did he give up his practice? A long time ago. Must be 15 years or so. His health broke down, so they say." Giles came out of the window and answered Gwenda's unspoken question. "He's coming over this afternoon. Oh," she turned once more to Foster. "Did you know Dr. Kennedy's sister at all?" "Sister? Not as I remember. She was only a bit of a lass, went away to school and then abroad, though I heard she came back here for a bit after she married. But I believe she ran off with some chap. Always wild she was, they said. Don't know as I ever laid eyes on her myself. I was in a job over to Plymouth for a while, you know." Gwenda said to Giles as they walked to the end of the terrace, "Why is he coming?" "We'll know at 3 o'clock." Dr. Kennedy arrived punctually. Looking around the drawing room, he said, "Seems odd to be here again." Then he came to the point with preamble. I take it that you two are quite determined to track down the sanatorium where Kelvin Halliday died and learn all the details you can about his illness and death. Definitely, said Gwenda. Well, you can manage that quite easily, of course, but I've come to the conclusion that if it will be less shock to you to hear the facts from me, I'm sorry I have to tell you, for it won't do you or anybody else a bit of good, and it will probably cause you, Gwenda, a great good deal of pain. But here it is. Your father wasn't suffering from tuberculosis, and the sanatorium in question was a mental home. A mental home? Was he out of his mind then? Gwenda's face had gone very white. He was never certified, and in my opinion, he was not insane in the general meaning of the term. He had had a very severe nervous breakdown and suffered from certain delusional obsessions. He went into the nursing home of his own will and volition and could, of course, have left it at any time he wanted to. His condition did not improve, however, and he died there. Delusional obsessions? Giles repeated the words questioningly. What kind of delusions? Dr. Kennedy said dryly. He was under the impression that he had strangled his wife. Gwenda gave a stifled cry. Giles stretched out a hand quickly and took her cold hand in his. Giles said, and had he? Uh, Dr. Kennedy stared at him. No, of course he hadn't. No question of such a thing. But how do you know? Gwenda's voice came uncertainly. My dear child, there was never any question of such a thing. Helen left him for another man. He'd been in a very unbalanced condition for some time. Nervous dreams, fancies, sick fancies, not fantasies. Um, the final shock sent him over the edge. I'm not a psychologist myself. They have their explanations for such matters. If a man would rather his wife was dead than unfaithful, he can manage to make himself believe that she's dead, even that he has killed her. Warily, Giles and Gwenda exchanged a warning glance. Giles said gently, so you are quite sure that there was no question of his having done what he said he had done? Oh, quite sure. I had 2 letters from Helen. The first one from France about a week after he went away, and one about 6 months later. Oh, no, the whole thing was a delusion, pure and simple. Gwenda drew a deep breath. Please, she said, will you tell me all about it? I'll tell you everything I can, my dear. To begin with, Kelvin had been in a rather peculiar neurotic state for some time. He came to me about it. He said he had had various disquieting dreams. These dreams, he said, were always the same, and they ended in the same way, with his throttling Helen. I tried to get to the root of the trouble. There must, I think, have been some conflict in early childhood. His father and mother apparently were not a happy couple. Well, I won't go into that. That's only interesting to a medical man. I actually suggested that Kelvin should consult a psychologist. There are several first class chaps, but he wouldn't hear of it. Thought that kind of thing was all nonsense. I had an idea that he and Helen weren't getting along too well, but he never spoke about that, and I didn't like to ask questions. The whole thing came to a head when he walked into my house one evening. It was a Friday. I remember I'd just come back from the hospital and found him waiting for me in the consulting room. He'd been there about a quarter or of an hour. As soon as I came in, he looked up and said, I've killed Helen. For a moment, I didn't know what to think. He was so cool and matter of fact. I said, you mean you've had another dream? He said it isn't a dream this time, it's true. She's lying there strangled. I strangled her. Then he said, quite coolly and reasonably, you better come back with me to the house. Then you can ring up the police from there. I didn't know what to think. I got out of the car again. We drove along there. The house was quiet and dark. We went up to the bedroom. Gwenda broke in. The bedroom? Her voice held pure astonishment. Dr. Kennedy looked faintly surprised. Yes, that's where it all happened. Well, of course, when we got up there, there was nothing at all. No dead woman lying across the bed, nothing disturbed. The covers not even rumpled. The whole thing had been pure hallucination. But what did my father say? Oh, he persisted in his story, of course. He really believed it. You see, I persuaded him to let me give him a sedative, and I put him to bed in the dressing room. Then I had a good look around. I found a note that Helen had left crumpled up in a wastepaper basket in the drawing room. It was quite dear. She had written something like this: this is goodbye. I'm sorry, but our marriage has been a mistake from the beginning. I'm going away with the only man I've ever loved. Forgive me if you can, Helen. Evidently, Kelvin had come in, read her note, gone upstairs, had a kind of emotional brainstorm, and then came over to me, persuaded that he had killed Helen. Then I questioned the housemaid. It was her evening out, and she had come in late. I took her into Helen's room. She went through Helen's clothes. It was all quite clear. Helen had packed a suitcase and a bag and had taken them away with her. I searched the house, but there was no trace of anything unusual. Certainly no sign of a strangled woman. I had a very difficult time with Kelvin in the morning, but he realized at last it had been a delusion, or at least he said he did, and he consented to go to a nursing home for treatment. A week later, I got, as I say, a letter from Helen. It was posted from Biarritz, I think. But she said she was going on to Spain. I was to tell Kelvin that she did not want a divorce. He had better forget her as soon as possible. I showed the letter to Kelvin. He said very little. He was going ahead with his plans. He wired out to his first wife's people in New Zealand, asking them to take the child. He settled up his affairs, and he then entered a very good private mental home and consented to have appropriate treatment. That treatment, however, did nothing to help him. He died there 2 years later. I can give you the address of the place. It's in Norfolk. The present, sorry, gotta have a little bit of a light here. The present superintendent was a young doctor there at the time and will probably be able to tell you full details of your father's case. Gwenda said, and you got another letter from your sister after that again? Oh, yes, after 6 months. She wrote from Florence, gave an address post restante as Miss Kennedy. She said she realized that perhaps it was unfair to Kelvin to not to have a divorce, though she herself did not want one. If she wanted a divorce, and I would let her know. If he wanted a divorce, I would let her know. She would see that he had the necessary evidence. I took the letter to Kelvin. He said at once that he did not want a divorce. I wrote to her and told her so. Since then, I have never heard any more. I don't know where she is living, or indeed if she is alive or dead. That is why I was attracted by your advertisement and hoped that I should get news of her. He added gently, I'm very sorry about this, Gwenny, but you had to know. I only wish you could have left well enough alone. And that is our chapter for tonight. Next chapter is chapter 9. And we will just keep going as long as everybody wants to. I guess, guys, thanks for joining me on Instagram. I appreciate it. I'm sorry for my technical problems. Hopefully next time I won't have any. So we'll see you all next week. That would be, I have to change the date on this, I think. Hopefully I can change the date really quick. Yeah. Okay. All right. Okay. So we will see you guys back here next Monday at 7:30. Hopefully I'll be here at 7:30. And we will talk then. We'll continue with our book. And I will see you then. Bye, guys. Bye, guys. Thank you for joining.